Hi everyone, welcome to the day 5 session on the Java. And so far what we have learned is uh, the simple Java programs for interviews, data types, the different operators from Java, object-oriented programming, and in the last session we learned about how to create a class object and what is constructor, how constructor is used, and then we learn this keyword as well. So just to quickly brush up, so constructor is actually a special method and which is used to which is used to initialize the object as soon as it gets created. So constructor gets automatically called, and the name of constructor and the name of class must be same. That is one. Second is constructor should not return any data, not even void. You cannot write even void return data type as well. That's second. And one more thing we learn is the this keyword. So this keyword is nothing but pointing to the class member variable. Okay. So I have some new topics today. So let me create a new project. All right, so it's day 5, static, non-static. Okay, we will learn about static and non-static thing. I don't want other project to be open, so you can simply say that close unrelated project. And there I'm going to add new class as, let me give the class name as, let's say, I want to give a class name as employee. Let's take example, I want to give a class name as point 2D, two-dimensional point that we already created in last session, but let's do it again. So int x, okay, and y. First we write data member, and then we write the methods of that class. So I want to have a default constructor. Okay, this is my default constructor. Default constructor do not take any parameter, and you can write some code in default constructor. So for example, I would just leave it blank because x and y will have default value as zeros, because those are class member. All the class member has a default value as 0, and here I will write another constructor point 2D, which is taking two parameter, int x, int y. Okay, and now there are duplicate variable, right? There are two variable in the same scope. So in this scope there are two x variables present. What I want to say is, if I simply write x equal to x, that means you are just copying the value of this x into the same x variable, which obviously I don't want to do, right? So I'm going to say this dot x. When I say this dot x, okay, when I say this dot x, it means I'm actually referring to the class member, class member x is equal to, now I'm writing normal x. So this is just a normal x, which is actually a local variable, and this int x and int y is my actually local variable. Similarly, I will do it this dot y equal to y. Okay, perfect. So this is the use of this keyword. Now I will write another method, public void. That method will not return anything, print, and I want to display the value of x and y. So x value, I will print x, again string concatenate, comma, space, then I will concatenate, sorry, I want to say that y value, space, and then y. So this is a string concatenation. It will look like x colon value comma y colon value. So that way it will look like. Okay, just excuse me for a second, guys. So yeah, I was saying this dot x is equal to x, this dot y equal to y. That means I'm actually initializing the class member variable equal to the local variable value. There is another method I wrote, public void print. This method will only print the values of x and y. Let's move on to the next topic. Okay. Now what I will do is I will simply create a new point class. Sorry, a main class, because I want to create object of point, and there I need a for that I will need a main method. So the class name I'm giving is main class example1, public static void main string args, and let's create the object of point2d. Point2d, let's say p1 equal to new point2d. Okay, this is you can actually call a default constructor. Actually you get an option of calling either default constructor or you can call a parameterized constructor. So I will call parameterized constructor. All right, and then I will simply say p1 dot print. Okay, so let's run this Java class. So as you can see, that outcome is right. It's printing 10 and 20. But now let's discuss on static and non-static. Guys, can anyone tell me, like in case of public main method, we write public static void main. Okay, so main method is actually a static method, whereas the methods that I have written here, for example, print method, this is not a static method. Okay, now there is a difference between static and non-static method. So for example, let's talk about two things. All right, okay, do one more thing. Let's do one more thing. I'm creating object of point p2 as some value, let's say 15, 32. Okay, and let's add some line p1. I don't want print ln, I will simply say that print, and then again I will simply say that print, and I want to print p2. So p2 dot, I'm calling print method. Now guys, tell me, what this code will do. What will be the outcome of this code? $10.20 and $15.32. Right values in single line. Yep, right. So the outcome is going to be 10.20 and 15.32. Because what happens for this code is, okay, very good. We get actually two objects created. So the first object is p1. So when I say p1 is equal to new point2d, it actually creates the first object as with the name as p1. Okay, and there will be a second object p2. Let's give a name. This is p1. This object is p2. A memory will be allocated for each of these variables, that is x and y. So there will be an x, there will be a y variable, okay, there will be a x variable, and there will be again a y variable into each object, right? And then we are setting up values to via constructor, right? 10 and 20 for p1, whereas 15 and 32 for p2 object. So let's write that value. So x is 10, y is 20, Okay, for P2, X is 15 and Y is 32. Okay. So if you call P1.print, we are actually calling a print method. We are calling a print method on P1. So let's go to that print method and see what is the code. So in print method, what we have written is X colon, I'm just printing the value of X and the value of Y. Okay, I'm just simply printing the value of X and Y. All right. So 10 and 20 will get printed here. So 10 comma 20 for the first line, And again, if you look into this line, which is actually p2.print, this time again I'm calling the same method. I'm calling the same method, but now this time the object is p2. So I'm calling the same method on object p2. So this line will actually print 15, 32. Okay. Do you have any questions so far, guys? Let me know if you have any questions, because the next topic is actually depend on this concept. All right, let's continue. Thanks, Aparna. No println is declared. I have declared. What do you mean by declared, Suresh? I didn't get that. See, I have system.out.println written directly inside this method, and this println is actually printing the value of X, the value of Y. Okay. So hope you understand. Can you please just repeat it quickly? Can you please run it? Yeah, sure. I will run that code again. See, we run the main class. So this is the main class. Let's run it. Okay, fine. So this is the outcome. It shows the outcome as P1 point is X 10 and 20, whereas P2 point, actually there should be some space, better formatting. So now this is better formatted. So P1 is 10 and 20, whereas P2 is 15 and 32. See guys, this is very easy. I just have created a point2d class. There is a method. This method I'm calling for first time on P1. So it is printing. So it is printing 10 and 20 for P1. And whenever I'm calling that object, this print method is the same method on P2. Now this will print 15 and 32. I hope it is clear. Fine. So the thing I wanted to tell you is I'm calling this method, the print method, on the P1 object, and then again the same method on P2 object. So automatically this X and Y will get will be coming from that P1 and P2. You can also write this dot X and this dot Y, because it's one and the same thing. If you don't have a local variable, any local variable with the same name, and you are directly writing, so here X and X, this dot X, both are same here. Okay, because there is no other local variable with the same name, that is X. So this dot X, it means the P1 dot X. And if you call this print method, let's say I'm calling P1 dot print. Okay, so that time this dot X, it means P1 dot X. And if you are calling that print method on P2 dot print, P2 object, okay, if you have called something like this, P2 dot print, that means this dot X, it means P2 dot X. Is that clear? So in short, this refers to the current calling object. Is this clear, guys? So this keyword, it actually refers to the current calling object. So let's say if I'm calling method on a P1, so inside that method, this means P1 object. And if I'm calling method on P2, so inside that method, this means the object P2. Okay, is that clear? Let me know if you have any queries. I don't see any questions on the chat window. So moving ahead. Fine. So I hope what is this keyword? This keyword is clear to you guys, and we are good to move further. So this is the normal method. This is a non-static method. Okay. Now there are two terms actually. The first term is static, okay, which is also referred as non-instance. Static means non-instance, and some people say that non-static. Non-static means instance. Now, can anyone tell me how we called print method, guys? How we called the print method? Very good. So Ashwini, Ashbhishek, you both are right. So we called print method on the object. We wrote, syntax something like this. So we wrote object dot method, right? So this syntax is used for non-static members. Okay. This syntax is used for non-static members. Okay, very good. And because this method, in my case, the print is a non-static method. Do you see static word here? There is no static. It means it is an instance method. Okay, these words are same. Non-static and instance both are same. Static and non-instance both are same. Okay. So these are two opposite words, static and instance, both are opposite words. So this method is an instance method, not a static method. Okay, and these instance methods are always called on the object. Whereas there could be another method, for example, print public void say hi. Okay, I will make this method as a static method. So just write static word, and I'm going to write hi there. That's it. Okay, a simple println message I have written here. But this method is actually a static method, and the static, it means it is non-instance. So we don't call this method on object. Instead, we call static members on the class name. So let's say class name dot static member, something like this. This is a syntax for calling a static member. So we write class name. Okay, let me repeat again. See, static methods are called on a class name. Static members are accessed on a class name. So if I go here and there, if I say the class name is point2d dot, you will automatically see that this method is automatically coming. So say hi. So this is this is static method. Okay, so static methods are always called on class name. Guys, this is clear? What is the difference between static and non-static? So non-static members are called on our object, whereas static methods are called on the class name. So we write class name dot static method name. We don't need any object for calling a static method. Okay, we do not need any object. We do not need any object to call static method. Okay, or to access a static member. Guys, is clear? Any questions so far? Can we access static methods without any dot? Okay. Actually, you can access methods without dot. Doesn't matter is it a static or non-static. You can access method without a dot also. Okay. Let me show you example. Let's say this is a print method, and inside this print method you want to call that below method, below static method. So you will simply say that say hi. You don't need to say dot or anything, because say hi method is present within the same class. So you don't have to say, something like a dot, but it is always recommended. Let's say if this is a static method, just give a dot, class name dot static name, method. This is the recommended syntax. But even though if you don't write it here, still it is fine. Okay. Now I'm coming back to the main method. What will happen if I don't write dot, then outside the point 2D, for example, say hi. So if you have some directly method name, that means you have written this method in your same class. Okay, but JVM will not find say hi method in the same class, so it will start giving you error. That is the reason you cannot write this syntax outside that class. Within same class you can do it. I hope I answered your query. Okay, what is next? Outside class, that means main class. Okay, thank you. Great. Any other questions, guys? Please let me know if you have questions. I'm still waiting for your questions, guys. When you have used static method in your Selenium project, where you have used? Okay, static method is used so many times. It is used so many times. Even I can't really give you example, because it is that vital. I mean, it is that important, not vital. It is that important in day-to-day coding as well. So we use static methods so many times. For example, the best example which I recall is I have an Excel utility class. Okay, Excel library is the name of a class. I will just draw it here. Oops. All right. Okay, let me draw it here. So example of static method is I have a class Excel utils, and this method has static method. Let's say read. Okay, read takes actually row number, and it also takes the column number. And read method returns the value. It returns the value which is present at that row and column. So this method is a static. If I want to call, I will simply say that Excel util. Sorry, this method also takes one more parameter actually. So there is a read method. Read method takes Excel workbook object. Okay, it also takes the sheet name. Let's say I'm passing sheet name as sheet 2, and I'm passing row number as, let's say, 2, and column number is 1 or 2, 3 and 2. Okay, so read method should return with a value, and this method is static. So how we will call? We will simply call Excel utils dot, oops, my bad, or okay, I hope you got the concept. I'm really sorry, I by mistake I deleted that. So the Excel util dot read, Excel util dot write, and such a kind of methods are already created. Whenever you need, you simply just call it. Okay, next question. That's just one example, but we use static method for many reasons. And how to know where to use it? Okay, how to know where to use it? It's that comes through an experience. It's not something. There are two stages in life, right? In learning actually. So first thing is we learn the things, how it is done, and then we try to implement it. Where you can implement it. That way. So you are actually into a first phase. When you actually start working on it, you get to know that where to implement in the practically in the project. So for example, you are learning actually what is accelerator doing. Let's take example of a car. You are actually learning while learning the driving, you actually learn what that accelerator is doing or what that gear is doing. But while riding it on the road in the real time, you decide when to give more accelerator or when to apply a brake, that way. So that's a different story, but I would suggest everybody to focus on learning things at least the basics for those who are learning Java for the first time, and for those who already knew it. You know, once you start practicing it, once you start implementing it, you will automatically start realizing, okay, this is the where you can actually use method overloading, or you can use method overriding, or you can have inheritance, or you can create a package, or you can actually create an interface instead of abstract class and something like that. You know, that comes through experience. But right now I'm just actually teaching you what are these you know, concepts and the basics about it. All right, uh, let me know if you have any other question. Okay, next part is now it is clear, right? The statics, the instance method are called an object dot method name, whereas static methods are called on object sorry, class name dot method name. Okay, now my question is, can we access, okay, please answer this question, can we access, okay, this x and y variable, x and y variable within any static method? Okay, is it possible that we can we access that x and y variable in a static method I'm talking about? I see you know, majority people are right. So yeah, the right answer is no, we can't. The reason is the memory will get allocated to the x and y only when the object is created. Okay, and this method can be called on a class name dot object name. Then, you know, tell me that which x and y variable will be used here. If you don't have an object, that means x and y also do not have any real life existence. So you cannot use x and y variable here. So in short, the rule is you cannot use other instance members in static method. Okay, this is not possible. Now let me show you an example. Let's say, you know, what will happen if I try to print the value of x. See, I'm just simply saying system.out.println and value of x. So it will tell me that cannot make a static reference to a non-static field. X is a non-static, so you cannot actually use this instance data value into a static method. Okay, that is a limitation. You can't do this. But if you have a static variable, okay, as I said, static variable are associated with a class, whereas instance member are associated with the object. So let's say I have a static member, let's say static float, you know, pi equal to 3.14, and I'm writing f because it's a floating number. So this is static variable. As you can see, I can use that in static member. Value of pi plus pi. Oops, it should be in uppercase. All right. So as you can see, this static variable is, sorry, pi is a static variable, and I can actually use other static member inside a static member. You know, that is a rule. You cannot use instance member inside a static member because the static method can be called on a, I mean, will be called on a class name, not on the object name. All right. So hope it is clear. Let me know if you still have any doubt or any query. I will try to answer that. Perfect. Let's move on to the next topic. If you have any questions, feel free to ping me on chat window. So we have done with the static and non-static. So what I will do is, let's discuss about why main method is static. Okay, why main method is static. The reason is main method, who's going, the question is who's going to answer this question? Who is going to call main method? Easy. It's so simple. Just give a try. Very good. I see all correct answers. So main method will be called by JVM. And how JVM calls it? JVM simply write your class name dot main. So that is the reason main method is always static, because JVM calls main method on class name. So simply write class name dot main and the method will be called. There is a question from Prashant. Static variable need to initialize. It depends on you. It is just like a normal variable. Even though if you don't initialize a static variable, it will have a default value. That is fine. Okay. I hope I answered your query. Okay. Yeah. So main method is called without creating object. It is called directly class name dot main method. That is why main method has to be static. All right, perfect. So I hope everybody understood what is static and what is non-static. Don't forget this difference because we will be using it daily. All right. So the question is, let's discuss, discuss the flow of a static method execution. Main method say hi. Since static executes first, why main method executing first? Since both are static. Okay. I think you wanted to say that, you want me to explain the flow of this static method. How the static is executed. Okay. Let me tell you, for every program, the entry point of execution is main. All right. So it will start executing the main method. What is the first line in main? It is creating object. Second line is another object. Third line is system.println. Then it will execute the p1.print. Okay. Now this is an instance member, as you can see. Even though say hi method is a static, that method will not be called. Because we go line by line test execution sequence. So say hi method will get an execution after all of these lines are executed. And the one thing you said that static executes first. So there is a one concept, which is known as a static block. So let me add a static block. So what you see here is actually a static block, and I'm going to just write system.println. This is static block. Okay, you can actually write some line of code. Now right, why we use a constructor. So constructor is used to initialize object, whereas static block is mostly used to initialize static variables. Okay, this is the most common answer why we need a static block. So this is a static block we have. Okay, and let's see when static block is executed. In this case, the static block will be executed first and then the static method. Okay, always remember this point. The static block will be executed. I'm talking about static block. Then only it will be executed first, and then the static method will be, the main method will be called after that. Now what I will do is I will go to the point 2D, and there also I will create a static block. Okay, just a static opening bracket closing bracket, and I'm printing static block of point 2D. Okay, now the very first thing, before calling this method, a static block will be called, then main method will be called, and inside a main method, I'm creating object of p1. So I try to access point 2D class. As soon as you try to access the point 2D class, the static block will be executed. Okay, this is how it is. So I will just do one thing. Main method started. Okay, and let's see how that code is executed. So first you see this is a static block. Okay, before accessing any method in the same class, static block will be executed. Okay, is that clear? Next, a main method is called. So you can see that main method started. Then I tried to access point 2D. I am trying to create object of point 2D. As soon as I try to access the point 2D, automatically the static block will be executed. So you see that static block is executed. So this is the flow of execution. So static block will be executed before accessing any member from that class. So JVM is trying to access the main method, but before that static will get called. So main method will try to access point2d class. So before that static block will be called. I hope you got that flow of execution for static block. Also, I cleared myself on static method and static block. These are different two things. Okay. Do we have a static class concept also in Java? Not really. Okay. Let me tell you two things. Yes, there is a static class in Java, but static class is only possible for the nested class. You cannot write a normal class as a static. Let's say if you write a static class, it will give you error, either abstract or something like that expected. So you cannot have illegal modifier. You cannot have a static class. But in Java there is a concept. You can have inner classes as well, a class inside a class. Okay, so for inner class you can actually write a static. Okay, so that if you write a static class, then it becomes a nested class. So nested classes are actually static. That is one concept in Java, but we haven't learned that thing yet. Any other questions? Public static class name, try please. Public static, yeah, it doesn't really matter. You can actually say static public or public static. Oh, you said public static class name. This doesn't really allow. See, again it will give you error. I'm telling you, Shanawaz, that static is not allowed for a class. When we can use a static in a real-time project, I already gave you examples, Swapna, about that Excel. I want to read and write using Excel. So Excel library is there and read write method is there. So, okay, static block, we hardly use it. It all depends. Let's say you have a static variable and you want to initialize that static variable, let's say, with something, let's say pi is equal to some calculation, and that thing you have to write, you can go with a static block. Nothing much, That's the only thing I would say. Perfect. I don't see any other questions, so let's move on to next topic. I will just close this project. Close project. The next topic is inheritance. So I'm going to start with a new topic today. Inheritance. It's very interesting topic. Okay. Can anyone tell me what is inheritance? Let's have a discussion first. What is inheritance? Okay, parent to child, reusability, deriving some properties which can be reused. Yeah, Farhan is right. Acquiring properties of parent. Yep, Ashwin is also right. So inheritance, like according to definition, inheritance, it's a way of acquiring properties of other class. Okay, we are actually acquiring properties of other class for the reusability purpose. And we have like parent class and child class in the inheritance. So now why we need inheritance? The main reason is reusability. Okay, the main reason is reusability. But now how that reusability is done? Now let's say you have a point2d class. Okay, you have a point2d class. It has x and y coordinate because this is two-dimensional point. Now in future you decide to develop a three-dimensional point as well. You wanted to have a three-dimensional point. So what we do is we simply create a class point, let's say 3D, And as we already had point 2D class with x and y, you don't need to write that x and y again. You can simply say that extends point 2D okay, public class point 3D and point 2D. So in this case, I will only add int z variable. I don't need to have x and y variable because that x and y is automatically coming from point 2D. Okay. Ashwini is saying someone requested to take shape example. Ashwini, shape example is related with some other topic in inheritance, not exactly this one. So we'll cover that later. So we have a point 2D class with x and y and a point 3D which is extending. When I say extending, that means point 3D is the child class, point 2D is the parent class. So child extends parent. Okay. In Java, we do not use this child and parent concept. We use super, okay, and sub. So super, it means super means parent class, and sub means child class. Super and sub classes. This is the terminology of Java. So super class is point 2D and sub class is point 3D. I hope it is clear now. Now, how do you use it? Let me create a class main example or main class, main method. So inside a main method, I'm just creating object of point 3D. Okay, let's say p equal to new point 3D. Oops. And as soon as I say p dot, I will say I can see actually x, y as well as z. And this x is coming from point 2D class, y is coming from point 2D class, and z is defined in is declared in point 3D. So you will get all these x and y, x, y, z points. Fine. Now let's say in point 2D I wrote one method void set data. Okay, this is the method which I'm writing in base class. That means parent class, int x, int y, and let's initialize this local variable x to the class member x. Syntax is this dot x equal to x, this dot y equal to y. Okay. Similarly, I will create a set data method p dot. Sorry, I will create now this set data method will be only setting data of x and y. I will create another set data method, public void set data. This set data is going to take 3 parameters because we have to set x, y, and z. Oh, I'm really sorry. We have to write that into point 3D class. My bad. So we have to set values of x, y, and z. So I'm writing int x, int y, and int z. You can simply say that this dot x, because that x is actually coming from point 2D class, is equal to x. This dot y equal to y. This dot z equal to z. All right. So set data method is there, okay, as well as set data method is also present in point 2D class. But the problem is we already have a set data method which is coming from the point 2D. Okay, why are we setting this x and y value again? Though we can do it, but this is redundant code, right? So the better approach is, let's call the set data method, this set data method, set data with just pass on the value of x and y. So so if you call this set data method with 3 parameters, the first two parameter will be sent to the base class set data method, and only z value will be initialized. So this is how we are taking help of reusability. This method is already defined it here. Set data is already defined for x and y. I am just simply calling that method. Okay, I hope it is clear. So in main method, we just have to say that p dot set data, or you can simply call p dot set data with x and y as well, because this method is coming from from the base class. But I want to set actually three values. So let's say x is 10, y is 20, z is 30. So I'm setting all these three value. Now it is time to print the values. So I want to say that p dot print. Let me create a method, p dot print. This print will display all the value of x and y and z. So I'm saying x comma y comma the value of z, x, y, and z. So we have print method, set data method in point 2D, point 3D, and point 3D has a parent class as point 2D, where we have x, y set data. And in main class, we are only working on the point 3D, as you can see it here. So let me run it. You see the outcome 10, 20, and 30. Okay, guys, is the inheritance is clear? You know how we have inherited, the base class is point 2D, the derived class is point 3D. We wrote some methods in derived class and some methods in point 2D. Let me know if you have any questions, I can answer that. No, we can actually inherit any kind of methods. It's not only related with public. We can actually inherit the protected, default, and public method. We cannot inherit private methods. But again, I wanted to remind you that we have not learned what is public, private, protected yet, and the default as well. So access specifier is still pending. We have not covered access specifier yet. Any other questions? Okay, there is a question from Prashant. Can you please explain the flow again? So flow is very easy. Let me explain you the flow first. So I am creating object of point 3D. Okay, so it is going to call default constructor of point 3D. Have we added a default constructor to this class? No, we don't have any constructor. We don't have any user defined constructor. So JVM adds a default constructor, right? That we learned yesterday. So I created object of point 3D. Now I'm calling set data on point 3D object. So set data will be calling this set data from the point 3D will get called. Now point 3D set data is again going to call point 2D set data, because this method is automatically coming from the point 2D class. And there I'm only giving x and y value. The third z value will be automatically assigned at this line. We are assigning the z value here. Now come back, method executed. Now next line is p.print, and in that print I'm printing x, y, and z values here. Okay, this open bracket, close bracket will be explained. I didn't get your question, Shahnawaz. Is superclass and child class is correct? Yeah, superclass and child class is correct. We don't have this method, Shahnawaz. This is a keyword, and we don't have this method. This is a keyword which refers to the current calling object, that we have covered in this starting of this session. There is a super method. You might have confused with super method. So that's a different story. We will cover it that soon. There is a question from Prashant. If we initialize x and y in point 2D class, then okay. I think we are already doing that, right? We are initializing x and y in point 2D class only, Prashant. So as you see this point 2D class, this method is actually coming from a point 2D class. So see, I'm clicking here and these values are getting initialized in point 2D. Okay, I hope I answered your query. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Now I'm going to write a constructor for point2D class. Okay, let's say I write a constructor. I don't want a default constructor. I want to have a parameterized constructor. Okay, so point2D int x int y. Okay, now point2D is having a parameterized constructor x and y, and I will just copy the same code. I'm just initializing the values x and y here. Why is there is error? Oh, the constructor name and the method name must be same. Okay, so I just corrected my mistake. By adding a constructor, a parameterized constructor to the base class, this will start giving me error for the derived class. If you have a constructor, a parameterized constructor in your derived class, and if you're not calling that constructor in your derived class, sorry, you have a constructor in a base class and you are not calling that constructor in the derived class while creating the object, it will give you error. Okay, sorry. So I was saying, I'm not calling the constructor of my base class. So while deriving, it will give you error saying that explicit constructor must implicit super constructor point2D with a parameterized constructor. There is no parameterized constructor for point3D, so you must define a explicit constructor. Okay, so let's define a constructor for point2D also. Let's say this is a constructor for point2D which is going to call point2D's constructor. Actually, the keyword that we use for calling the point2D constructor is super, and then we pass the values. For demo purpose, I'm just writing two values. Okay, now you can see that error is gone. So if you're not calling constructor of your base class in the derived class, that means you cannot create object of this class. You must have to call the constructor of the base class in your derived class if base class has a parameterized constructor. Okay. Okay. So so I'm just calling this super and passing these two values. Okay. Okay, so I was saying that super constructor has base class constructor has to be called. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Excuse me for that. So I was saying that we need to call the base class constructor in the derived class. Then only you can actually do the inheritance. Fine. So there is a super keyword, and super keyword helps you to call the base class constructor, which I have defined it here. Okay, but again, this is not the way I want. So I'm going to add the parameters to my point3D constructor as well. I don't want a default constructor for my point3D. So I want to have point3D as a parameterized constructor with int x, int y, int z. Okay, this dot x equal to x. Oops, optionally you can say something like this dot x equal to x, y equal to y, but the problem is if you have a constructor and again you are not calling the constructor of your base class, it will start giving you error. So there will be a quick fix. Quick fix is simply use super keyword, pass on the x and y value here. Okay, and the remaining z we will initialize it here only. So this dot z is equal to z. Perfect. Now I have a parameterized constructor to point3D and there is a parameterized constructor to point 2D as well. Okay. Now let's say I wanted to have an overloaded constructor. Okay, because as you can see in main class, I start getting error because I was calling this point 3D on using a default constructor, but now there is no longer a default constructor exist. But still, if you want to keep a default constructor, let's do that. I'm overriding the constructor point 3D. Okay, but in this case also, for every constructor there has to be a super keyword call. If there is an inheritance, for every constructor there has to be a super. But in this constructor I don't have a super. The solution is, again, you have to pass super and give the x and y value. But again, I don't want to actually give x and y value, so go here, there also, in the base class also I'm writing a default constructor. Okay, yeah, so I was saying, for my derived class, I wrote a default constructor. In my base class, again I wrote a default constructor. But in this case you don't have to say super open bracket close bracket, because JVM by default adds call to default constructor. Okay, so even though if you do not say super open bracket close bracket, still this is fine, because JVM automatically adds a super keyword call here. Okay, so I hope it is clear to you that how this constructor is called. I can take another example. Okay, so let's see your comments, Shanawaz. Yes, it will be used for constructor chaining, this method. Okay, it seems there is a lag. Okay, not clear with the parameterized constructor and the super keyword, need more clarity on data constructor. Okay, Raj, you will need some time, to do some practice. Until and unless you don't do any hands-on practice, if you don't try any code, it's going to be a little bit difficult. But still, I will try to cover the same topic in my next example as well. Okay, any other queries? Yeah, agree with Prashant. It's not really a difficult, it's very easy. The thing is, maybe I should have taken some better example, or maybe some more easy example. I just mixed up two things, parameterized and default constructor. As you are like, most of you are like, getting confused between the parameters and default constructor itself. All right, so it's not that really difficult. You will get used to with this as soon as we move ahead with the next questions and next examples. Thanks, Farhan. Thank you very much. Fine. Let me give you another example to cover the same topic. Okay. So let's say there is a person class. Okay. Person has string name. Okay. Person also has date of birth, DOB. Okay. And I want to have, or just leave it, just leave this methods. There, okay, what I will do is I will just create simply another class, say class student. I'm writing the same class in the same file, extends person. Actually, it's absolutely allowed to write multiple classes into one file. So I'm saying class student extends person. All right, and this time for a student I will be just adding more values at roll number. Okay, and student will have its school name, so string school name. Okay, So now you have to answer, guys. How many constructors are there in person class? How many constructors are there in person class? Okay, very good. If you don't write any constructor, by default JVM adds one constructor. We have not written any constructor, so JVM is going to add that constructor. So JVM adds constructor something like this. Okay, so this is the default constructor which will be added by JVM. I will write it. Okay, so either JVM is adding it or you add it. You know, it doesn't really matter, but this is going to be the same code. So for student also the same rule is applicable. So for student, okay, again we have a default constructor. All right, but guys, tell me, you know, which object will, let's say if you are creating object of a student, okay, you want to create object of a student, which variable gets memory first, name or roll number? Which variable will get memory allocation first, name or roll number? Think logically. Roll number, name. Guys, I see there are many participants online, but seeing reply only for few selected people. Can you please, you know, see, this is an online session and you have to be interactive, you know. So, okay, I see a mixed kind of a response. Some people say it's roll number, some people say it's name. But let me tell you, student cannot exist without a person. That student has to be a person first and then he can become a student. Do you agree with this? The student has to be person first and then you know, that person will become a student. So the memory allocation should be done, even though you are creating object of a student, the memory should be allocated to person first. Okay, so the memory for name and DOB will be assigned first and then roll number and school name will come in existence. Okay, do you agree with this? So name will get memory first. Okay, now as soon as again, as we discussed, you know, now I'm writing, you know, in this constructor I'm just writing a system.out.println in person class constructor. Okay, similarly let me write student class constructor. Sorry, what was that? I didn't get Raj. Okay, so there is a person class which is extended and we have both the default constructors here. Yeah, sorry, my bad. I will just remove that line, import. Okay. All right. So as we discussed, name variable will get memory first and then, you know, the person variable, person class member will get memory first and then roll number class will get memory first. Now the next question is, which constructor will be called first, person or student? Person or student? I see one person. Person, okay. Okay. All right. I think everyone is right about the answer. So person constructor will be called first and then student constructor will be called. Okay. But if you see while writing a main class, okay, I will write main class here only so that you can actually see the full code. Okay, I'm writing main class here, creating object of student, new student. Okay, And let's run this main class and see, which constructor is getting called first. As you already said, the person class constructor will first receive, sorry, what is this? Okay, I want to run which class? I want to run person class. Okay, let's run it. So in person class constructor first and then student class constructor. Even though you are creating object of a student, so you see, it is something like we are calling constructor of a student, constructor of a student, but still the person class constructor will get executed first. Now why is this happening? This is happening because JVM automatically adds a super call as the first line in your constructor. So this is the line which is added by JVM, Okay, so super slash slash is the line which will be automatically added by JVM. Okay, it is actually a compile time, Raj. It's just fact that we don't see it. We don't see it in the source code. It is there already added into bytecode. So a super will be automatically added. If it is similar like how the default constructor is added by JVM. So JVM automatically calls the default constructor. JVM tried to call the default constructor of your base class. Okay. Now you can see that I'm calling a student constructor. Let's click on here. Execution will go here. Now it will call super. It means the base class constructor. The person will receive a call. Now inside a person, there is a one line written. So this line will get executed. Again come back. Super method executed. Now next line will be executed as student class constructor. So that is the reason person class constructor printed first and then student class constructor is printed. Is this clear, guys? Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, that's great. I hope this is clear to everyone. Now let's add one more difficulty level. Let's see what will happen if there is a parameterized constructor. Okay, now I will just comment out this constructor. Fine, but still this super is getting called. Why? Can anyone answer why that super is getting called even though we don't have any constructor? Yeah, very good answer. Because default constructor will be added by default from the JVM. So we still get a person constructor here. Now what I'm going to do is this time I will add a parameterized constructor. Okay, person, which is taking the string name and string date of birth. Okay. Now you decide what you want to do. I will just simply copy the value. So this dot name equal to name. This dot dob equal to dob. Perfect. Now this JVM tries to add a call to super default constructor, but the problem is constructor person is undefined. There is no default constructor for the base class person. So that is the reason it is giving me error. Let's say you comment it out. Still JVM tries to add a call for a default constructor. See, JVM is still trying to add that super open bracket close bracket method, but there is no person default constructor defined here. Okay, so what JVM suggests is to explicitly invoke another constructor. And how to explicitly invoke another constructor? It's very easy. Simply say that super and then you will have to pass the values for the super constructor. Okay, so that school name and I gave a school name or what? Okay, so that you have to pass the name and the date of birth here. Okay, but now the question is from where you get the name and date. That is another question. For that matter, what I will do is a parameterized constructor. For this constructor, I will add a parameters. So one thing is the name of a person, another thing is date of birth of the person. Okay, now this is for person, but we are actually written which class? Student, and for student we still have two more fields. So let's add those fields as well. So int roll number, string, school name. Okay, so now there are 4 parameters to my student constructor, and out of these 4 parameters, these first 2 values I will pass it to the derived to the base class, sorry, and remaining 2 value I will just initialize it here itself. So this dot roll number, because I'm saying this because I want to refer to that variable which is present in the object, that object's roll number equal to the local variable roll number, and this dot school name equal to school name. All right, so this is done, but again the code will give you error because now as we added a parameterized constructor, there is no default constructor. This code will start giving you error, so you will have to add the values also. Vikas, date of birth, what is next? Roll number, it's integer, so 101. What is next? It is school name, so I go for ABC school. Okay, and finally then you can do whatever you want on this object. So I hope the constructor topic is clear. So what we learned today is we learn the inheritance. Okay, there are different types of inheritance. We only covered one type. We will continue with the same topic. So we learn inheritance, we learn extends keyword, we learn how that constructors are getting called. We also learn the super keyword, and we also saw some constraint. If your base class is having a parameterized constructor, that parameterized constructor must be called in the derived class constructor using a super keyword. Okay, that we have learned so far. So let me know if you have any questions. But I think that's all for today. Thank you very much for attending this session. I will wait for your queries, guys.